Good morning, it's Kristen from Tips from the Disney Diva, and I wanted to share with you some of my sort of initial impressions of Disneyland from a very Disney World girl's perspective, and hopefully it'll be something that you can learn from. I think that pretty much anybody who really loves Disney World wants to, at some point in time, go to Disneyland, right? This concept of walking where Walt walked, which is a tour I'm going to do today, which I cannot wait to share with you guys a little bit later, but so some of my initial impressions. I really like it. It's very different than Walt Disney World to me, though, and there's a sense of intimacy that I feel like Disney World is lacking. Even though I feel like Disney World is home to me, I still feel like there's a bit of a lacking of sort of closeness and intimacy that it works. So what I'll do is I'll tell you some pros, and then I'll tell you some cons along the way of what I thought about the park. The first thing I'll tell you is, for people who are Walt Disney people, when you first walk in, Main Street and the castle are not as overwhelming to you. Their pattern is very similar to Disney World, but the size of it does not compare. It is so much smaller. The castle in particular does not dominate the landscape. It's beautiful, but it just doesn't dominate the landscape in the same way that it does at Walt Disney World. So, initially you might sort of feel a sense of letdown, but I'm telling you, there are so many amazing things about Disneyland that I absolutely love. Well, one of the first things that I love is there's lots of live music everywhere. I mean, everywhere you go, there's live music. It's not this sort of canned, junk. Well, I don't want to call it junk because I love the Disney World music too, but it's not this canned music. There's a lot of live stuff that happens. So I love that. Toontown, so much better than what we had at Disney World. Like, doesn't even compare. It is so much better than that. I just loved Toontown. I felt like I was walking into a cartoon, and it was great. So one of the downsides here is a lot of the queues, the waiting lines, are outside. And so if it was super hot, like in the dead summer here at Disneyland, then you would be hot a lot. So here's a little tip for you. If you're going to wait in a super long line, you really probably need to wait in that super long line in the evening once it the sun goes down and it starts to cool off. That will definitely help you a lot with your temperature stuff. Another little bit of a downside is that the lines sort of bleed out into the walkway. Everything's much more narrow, and so you are constantly like walking, and then you run up against somebody and they're waiting in line, and it's hard to tell like what's a line and what's just a walking situation. So that was a little bit weird to me. Loved Haunted Mansion. I thought that their Haunted Mansion, Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, is better, honestly. My husband says it's really not that different, but I really liked it. I felt like there was a lot more tiny details that I noticed in Haunted Mansion, and New Orleans Square is just fantastic. You can sit there and really relax, and I think that's one of the things that I really like about Disneyland is I felt like it was okay for me to sit and relax. I didn't feel like I had to just constantly power through. Another thing I love about Disneyland is that it's very compact. I mean, it's ride next to ride next to ride next to ride. And so I feel like when I'm at Disney World, many times I exert a lot of energy walking from one side of the park to the other side of the park, and you don't have that situation. I mean, my feet hurt at the end of the day, but it was nowhere near what it is when I'm at Disney World. So I really like that things were close. Of course, that also makes things more crowded. So that's one of the downsides, sort of. Perhaps my favorite thing so far about Disneyland is the proximity of the hotels to the park. I literally can walk out of my hotel, which is the Tropicana, and be standing in the park in about 7 minutes. That's me walking. And I'm paying very, very similar to what we would consider value or a moderate price at Disney World. So you're getting all of the perks of the deluxe, the closeness, and you're not paying anywhere near as much. So good neighbor hotels, brilliant. In particular, I love the Tropicana. It feels very similar to Port Orleans, and as far as the rooms go, and I could see fireworks from my balcony last night. I was so close. I could see the fireworks going off over the Matterhorn. So it's definitely smaller, and it's definitely more compact, but I think there's a sense of intimacy that Disney World sort of lacks. And so that's sort of my initial impression. My co-writer, the Disneyland diva, and I met up yesterday, and many times she'd say, well, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I think she was really worried about me not liking it. But I really do, and I think it's because it's a different Disney experience. It's not like having just a miniature version of Disney World. It's a completely different experience. So today I'm going over to California Adventure, and I've got a tour, and I'm super excited to continue bringing you tips. I've got 2 or 3 already rolling around in my head, so I am going to grab some breakfast, and I will see you later today.